So how does a single crime, one act of violence, lead to the potential dismantling of an entire religious organization? Today, we're going to trace the incredible chain of events that started with the assassination of a former prime minister and ended with a government action that could change the legal landscape in Japan for good. Let's get into it.
It all began right here, July 8, 2022, a moment that absolutely shocked the world. The public assassination of Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, an event that stopped everyone in their tracks.
But here's the thing. The motive wasn't what anyone expected. This wasn't some grand political statement. No, it was deeply, deeply personal. The shooter had a long-standing grudge against a specific religious group, FFWPU-Japan, which he blamed for his family's financial ruin. And this is where the story takes a turn that is just unprecedented. In response to one man's crime, fueled by a personal vendetta, the Japanese government set in motion a process that led to this, a court order to completely dissolve that very same religious organization.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How does the motive of a single individual trigger a state-level action of this magnitude? That is the puzzle we are going to unpack today.
All right, so let's rewind. In those first few hours and days, the media coverage was pretty much what you'd expect. Chaotic, fragmented, and focused like a laser on the crime itself.
The initial reports were all about the facts on the ground. The story was simple, right? A horrific crime had been committed. A suspect was in custody. And the narrative? It was being tightly controlled, mostly fed by official leaks from law enforcement. It was a crime story, plain and simple.
But that simple crime story, it didn't last long. In fact, in just 72 hours, the entire focus of the narrative shifted, and it transformed from a straightforward crime story into something much, much bigger.
Just look at the speed of this. It's incredible. On day one, it's about a crime. By day two, online magazines are already bringing the religious group into the story. And by day three, a major newspaper is cementing this link between the church and the nation's politics. So in just 3 days, the story wasn't really about the assassin anymore. It was about this powerful religious institution.
Now, this lightning-fast pivot is a perfect example of what communication experts call media spin. The art of carefully selecting which facts to highlight in order to frame a story and guide public opinion in a very specific direction.
And this really illustrates something called gatekeeping theory. Think of it like this. At first, the police were the gatekeepers. They controlled what information got out. But then, online magazines became the new gatekeepers, opening a door to a totally different narrative. And once that gate was open, the mainstream media just flooded through, making the story about the church the dominant one.
And this new narrative wasn't just built on a new set of facts. Oh no. It was supercharged by the language the media chose to use, which very effectively painted the religious group as the central villain of the entire story.
Okay, let's take the word cult, for instance, which was thrown around everywhere in the reporting. Academics and scholars much prefer the neutral term new religious movement, and they argue that cult isn't a scientific description. It's a loaded, pejorative label that's basically used to stigmatize a group.
The reporting also leaned really heavily on this idea of mind control. But here's the thing. This concept is widely considered to be pseudoscience. It was basically created as a piece of propaganda to label bad religions, and it has been largely discredited by academics and even by the courts.
And hey, this isn't just some academic debate. The idea of mind control has been pretty consistently rejected in courtrooms all over the world. We're talking courts in Italy, the US, and get this, even in Japan itself, have all ruled that the theory just doesn't hold up. There's no credible scientific or legal basis for it.
So you've got this intense media narrative. It's amplified by really emotional testimony from the suspect's uncle and others. And it just creates this firestorm of public pressure. And politicians, they were feeling that pressure. The government felt like it had to do something.
Now, at first, the government's position was totally firm. On October 18th, Prime Minister Kishida came out and said that under the current law, a dissolution order just wasn't possible. Why? Because it required proof of criminal violations.
But then, just 24 hours later, a complete 180. The Prime Minister announced that actually, civil law violations, not just criminal acts, could be enough to justify it. In a single day, the legal goalposts had been completely moved. It was a dramatic shift.
And that sudden pivot, which was reportedly made without even a formal cabinet decision, just opened the floodgates.
The government used its right to question the church for the first time in history, and that led directly to a formal dissolution request and eventually the final court order.
So what are the real consequences of all this? I mean, what's the big picture? Well, the analysis we've been following argues that this chain of events has some really serious implications that go way beyond just this one case.
For one, it raises questions about whether the media's own conduct violated Japan's broadcast law. I mean, you look at the requirements for fairness and balance, and the coverage seems to fall short, relying almost entirely on one-sided sources and pretty much ignoring other viewpoints. And experts cited in this analysis offer a really chilling warning here. When a government effectively dismantles a group to satisfy the motive of a violent criminal, it seriously risks handing that person a victory. The message it sends is that violence actually works.
So when you put all the pieces together, the picture is, well, it's pretty troubling. It sets a dangerous precedent where public outrage, fanned by the media, can actually override established legal principles. And that sets off all kinds of alarm bells about constitutional rights and the very real risk of making violence seem like a legitimate tool for change. And so, we're left with this fundamental and frankly very difficult question. In the face of a national tragedy, when does a government's response to public will stop being democracy in action and start undermining the very rule of law it's supposed to protect? It's a fine line, and in this case, it seems to have been redrawn almost overnight.